Lei Trangtong, whose real name was Lei Duinin, was the first emperor of the revival Lei dynasty, Lei Chunghung. He is regarded as the one who initiated the restoration of the Lei monarchy after the Mac dynasty overthrew the earlier Lei dynasty. He ascended the throne in 1533 while in the Ai Lao region, present-day Laos, under the support of Nguyen Kim, a loyal and renowned official of the former Lei court. Lei Trangtong was not only a symbol of legitimate royal authority, but also a rallying figure for forces loyal to the Lei dynasty, helping to rebuild strength against the rule of the Mac. During his 15-year reign, although real power lay in the hands of military leaders like Nguyen Kim and Trinh Kim, his presence laid the foundation for the long-term restoration of the Lei court. Under his reign, the Lei forces, based in Thanh gradually expanded their influence northward, engaging in fierce conflict with the Mac dynasty in what came to be known as the Southern and Northern Dynasties period. He died in 1548, leaving behind a dynasty restored in name, though its actual authority remained unstable. Lei Kinh Tong, whose real name was Lei Dui Tun, was the 16th emperor of the Lei dynasty, reigning in the early 17th century, a time when emperors were kings in name only, with all real power held by Lord Trinh. Born during a period when the country had reclaimed Thang Long, present-day Hanoi, from the Mac, yet had fallen into a new internal power struggle between the Lei emperors and the Trinh lords, Lei Kinh Tong grew up with a quiet resentment and a burning desire to restore the throne's true power. Despite having limited authority, he secretly nurtured great ambitions, and in 1619, conspired with close courtiers such as Nguyen Dan Thay in an attempt to overthrow the Trinh lordship and reclaim real power for the monarchy. However, the plot failed, and Lei Kinh Tong was discovered and forced to hang himself, marking a tragic end to a painful chapter in the Lei dynasty's history, and highlighting the deep, irreconcilable conflict between the symbolic monarchy and the de facto rulers of the revival period. His death stands as a symbol of a courageous emperor powerless against his time, and remains one of the most profound political tragedies in Vietnam's feudal history. Lei Trangtong, the torch of legitimacy amidst the darkness of national collapse. For more than half of the 16th century, Dai Viet endured one of its most chaotic and devastated periods. The Lei dynasty, once glorious under Lei Thanh Tong, gradually declined due to internal strife and power struggles among the nobles. The court fell into disorder as powerful clans like the Nguyen, Trinh, and Mac emerged like raging waves, vying for control of a decaying ship. In 1527, the Lei dynasty was officially overthrown. Mac Dang Dung, a military general who had risen from humble origins through the ranks of the imperial guard to become grand preceptor, forced Emperor Lei Kung Huang to abdicate and established the Mac dynasty. Though talented, Mac Dang Dung's usurpation triggered nearly a century of national division, the bloody and tearful Southern-Northern dynasties conflict. At that time, people in the capital Thang Long lived under the Mac flag, but their hearts longed for the fallen Lei dynasty. In the remote, mountainous regions of Thanh Hoa and Nghệ An, a quiet restoration movement was begun by Nguyen Kim, a loyal and righteous minister who refused to submit to the Mac. Deep in the forests and mountains, he traveled to the land of Ai Lao, now part of Laos, to seek out any surviving descendant of the Lei dynasty. Then, like a sudden flash of light in the night, Lei Duinin, the son of Emperor Chiu Tong, who had been wandering in exile, was found. That was in 1533. In a humble yet sacred ceremony in the mountains, Nguyen Kim and his loyal generals enthroned Lei Duinin, giving him the title Trang Tong and reviving the Lei dynasty, ushering in the era known as Lei Chunghung. This emperor had no capital, no grand throne, no splendid court garments, but he carried something more precious than power: legitimacy. To the Vietnamese people of that era, the Lei emperor was not merely a ruler, but a symbol of order, justice, and rightful heritage, descended from Binh Dinh Vuong Le Le's uprising in Lam Son. Now, that tradition was being revived from the old land of Thanh Hoa, just as their forefathers had once begun a rebellion. Lei Trangtong and Nguyen Kim built a makeshift court, recruited soldiers, gathered talented men, and established a base at Tay Kin, now in Thanh Hoa. Under the name of the Southern Dynasty, he began a long war against the Northern Dynasty, Mac forces occupying Thang Long. During his more than 15 years of reign, Trang Tong was not a warrior king, but he was a tactful, gentle ruler who trusted and appreciated talented individuals. He entrusted military affairs to Nguyen Kim and later to generals like Trinh Kim, who would become the first Trinh Lord, laying the foundation for nearly 2 centuries of Trinh rule. Trang Tong also worked on building a temporary administrative system, issued edicts seeking the wise, reopened civil service exams, and preserved royal rituals, demonstrating clearly that the Lei court had not vanished, but was merely temporarily displaced from Thang Long, awaiting the day of national restoration. Yet the path to restoration was not easy. The war dragged on, the country remained divided, and the people suffered. While the Mak strengthened their hold in the north, the Lei southern dynasty gradually expanded northward, reclaiming land inch by inch. In 1545, Nguyen Kim, the court's main pillar, was poisoned and died. Trang Tong then became the one to shoulder the burden of a court standing in the face of storms. Fortunately, he entrusted military power to Trinh Kim, Nguyen Kim's son-in-law, who helped stabilize the front and strengthen their position. By 1548, after years of hardship preserving and rebuilding the court, Emperor Trang Tong passed away at the age of 38. He did not live to see Thang Long return to lay hands. But his role in reigniting the restoration movement and laying the foundation of the Trung-Hung era was undeniable. The court bestowed upon him the temple name Trang Tong, meaning solemn origin of rightful legitimacy. Later generations remembered him as the first light that pierced the darkness of a lost kingdom, as the one who rekindled the soul of a shattered nation in its most bewildering and broken hour. Le Kinh Tong, a king's aspiration for restoration, shackled by tyranny, born amid political rupture. Le Duy Tun, the birth name of King Le Kinh Tong, was born in 1588, during a time when Dai Viet had somewhat stabilized after nearly 60 years of civil war between the southern and northern dynasties. The Le dynasty, once overthrown by Mak Dang Dung, had been restored in name thanks to the support of the Trinh clan, led by Trinh Tung, the first lord to truly rule over the northern region of the country. But this so-called revival concealed a deep crack. The revival Le dynasty was no longer a true monarchy. From the reign of Le An Tong onward, the Le throne was merely symbolic. All real power rested with the Triton lords. The emperor was forbidden from interfering in military affairs. In the capital Thang Long, there existed 2 centers of power, the royal palace and the lord's residence, where actual state commands were issued. Growing up in such an environment, Le Duy Tan was anything but insignificant. On the contrary, historical records note his intelligence, strength, and ambition. At just 12 years old, he was placed on the throne by Trinh Tung in the year 1600, assuming the reign title Hang Ding, and became the 16th emperor of the Le dynasty, Le Kinh Tong. Great aspirations trapped in a gilded cage. Throughout his 19-year reign, Le Kinh Tong lived like a shadow within the royal court. All state affairs were handled by Lord Trinh Tung. Even edicts and official appointments had to pass through the lord's approval. The lord's residence functioned as a separate court beside the royal palace, with its own civil and military officials, its own army, and spies embedded everywhere. At first, Le Kinh Tong tried to maintain a cordial relationship, but his frustration grew with time. While the emperor remained a mere figurehead in the Can Nguyen Palace, the lord's court became increasingly powerful, lavish, and militarized. Trinh Tung was granted the title Bin An Vuong and established his authority like a parallel dynasty. Unwilling to accept the role of a puppet king, Le Kinh Tong quietly planned a coup, intending to reclaim true power from the Triton lords and restore the rightful role of the emperor. A failed conspiracy and the tragic end. In 1619, when Trinh Tung was aging and believed his power to be unchallenged, Le Kinh Tong and loyal courtiers such as Nguyen Dang Thay and Trinh Xuân, even Trinh Tung's own son, began to act. Their plan was to assassinate Trinh Tung during court assembly, swiftly take control of the military, overthrow the lord's government, and return authority to the royal court. But the plot was exposed before it could be carried out. Spies from the lord's residence reported it. The entire conspiracy was crushed within days. Furious, Trinh Tung ordered the execution of all conspirators. Even the emperor, though a son of heaven, could not escape. But Tong knew that killing the king outright would brand him a traitor. Thus, he forced the king to commit suicide in secret. Tong was compelled to hang himself in the cold confines of the palace. He was only 31 years old. Legacy and the echo of a soul yearning for freedom. The death of Tong marked a bitter turning point. Not long after, Sun, the son of Tong and a co-conspirator, was also killed. The court became even more dependent on the Trent lords. Subsequent emperors barely dared to dream of reclaiming power. The Lei throne was now purely symbolic, a legitimate facade for the Trent lords' de facto rule. Yet, Tong was not forgotten. In history, he is remembered as a king of integrity, who refused to yield to the shadows of power and who dared to rise against the unjust order that shackled the throne. He became a symbol of a suffocated yearning for freedom, a dynasty whose human dignity still flickered amidst the darkness of tyranny. The final words of a historical tragedy. If Trang Tong was the one who reignited the torch of legitimacy amidst the darkness of national collapse, then Tong was the one who tried to protect that flame in a world already changed. He was not a successful man, but he was one who dared to dream, dared to resist, and dared to die for what he believed was right. In the history of Vietnam's feudal era, few monarchs carried such bitterness, sorrow, and spirit as he did. And perhaps that is why his story must be told, not merely as a lesson in power, but as a lesson in courage before destiny. Two flames in two eras of a fading dynasty. The history of the revival dynasty, Lei Trung-hung, is a mournful melody, filled with tragedies and faint glimmers of light. During its more than two-century existence, some kings were mere shadows, some pursued the dream of revival, and others quietly laid the foundations of legitimacy. Among them, Lei Trang Tong and Lei Kinh Tong stand out, not for power, but for their symbolic roles and unyielding spirit amid turbulent times. Lei Trang Tong, the one who rekindled the flame of a dynasty. Lei Trang Tong was not a king who ruled from a grand palace, nor did he command armies. But at a time when the Lei dynasty had been erased from the annals of history by the Mak, he emerged like a light in the dark, bearing the mantle of legitimacy to restore a seemingly doomed monarchy. He was the one who revived the Lei dynasty, becoming the first ruler of the Lei Trung-hung period that lasted over 200 years. With the support of Nguyen Kim and loyal officials, he not only restored the throne, but also revived the spirit of loyalty to the monarch and Confucian virtue, becoming a rallying banner in the southern-northern dynastic conflict. Without him, the Lei dynasty would have remained a memory. Thanks to him, that memory came alive once more, that even if only in makeshift courts hidden in the mountains. Lei Kinh Tong, the one who dared to rise in a gilded cage. In contrast, Lei Kinh Tong ruled from the throne in Thang Long within a splendid court, but lived under the shackles of powerful lords. He had the title of king, but no real power, and that reality tormented his ambitious spirit. He refused to be a puppet in royal robes, and harbored a great desire to overthrow the Trent lords and restore true power to the monarchy. Though his coup failed and he died in silence within the palace walls, his death rang out as a final act of resistance from the Lei throne, defying the forces that manipulated the nation's fate. He became a symbol of unyielding will, of righteous flame that, though extinguished, still sought to flare up one last time. Two kings, one historical current. If the Lei Trung-hung dynasty was a ship sailing through stormy seas, Lei Trang Tong was the one who first took the oar, while Lei Kinh Tong tried to seize the helm when the ship had already been overtaken by the powers behind the throne. They represent two contrasting periods. Trang Tong, the beginning of national restoration, a symbol of legitimacy, unity, and origin. Kinh Tong, the height of dependency on the Trent lords, a symbol of integrity, defiance, and tragedy. They were not kings of grand victories, but history always needs such figures, flames against the wind, igniting the people's spirit, preserving the soul of the nation during times when power and morality no longer walked hand in hand.